I'm Victor. I'm heading back to my hometown to crash with my parents. After going through a rough patch with work and relationships, I decided to live in the basement since it has everything I need, like a bathroom and a kitchen. It makes me feel like I'm living in my own place. Other than working at my new job, I'll just be hanging out in the basement, reading, listening to music, and enjoying my own space. And it's this basement that both put me at risk and helped me get away from it. A few months ago, one night, there was a crazy storm and I was home alone. After checking all the doors and windows upstairs, I went back to my own space. I turned on the light, read a book, and just enjoyed the sound of the rain. It was so relaxing. By the time my eyes got tired and heavy, I put the book down, but kept the light on like usual and went to bed. The next second, the light went out, and I was engulfed in darkness. I wasn't really freaked out or confused. It's pretty normal for a storm to mess with the power lines. I figured I'd just sleep like that, and everything would be back to normal by morning. I closed my eyes for a bit, then got jolted awake by a loud bang. At first, I thought it was a broken tree branch hitting the window. But the second time, the sound was followed by what I was pretty sure was a metallic noise. The third time I heard the loud noise, I was sure the window had been broken. I jumped up like hell, ran to the basement door, and quietly locked it. Back in bed, I fumbled for my phone to call the police, but the Wi-Fi was down when the power went out, and there was no phone signal. I went back out, stood by the basement door, and tried to listen. Then I realized, staying in here was pointless. This basement had no windows, and there was no way out if something went wrong. I held my breath, unlocked the door again, and tiptoed out. My heart was pounding with every step, and it was getting clearer. There were about 2 or 3 people, and they started searching the house upstairs. They were whispering to each other, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. I pictured the house layout. Go upstairs, turn right, and you'll see the kitchen. The window there could help me escape. Using the darkness to my advantage, I started putting this crazy plan into action. Just a few steps I'd usually take, but for some reason, it felt so exhausting in that moment. My mouth was dry, my heart was racing, and I tried to push down my fear to save myself. About 5 steps away from the floor, all I could make out were the blurry silhouettes of 3 guys from the flashlights in their hands. They were all tall, and there were a lot of them, but what really made me freeze was the thing they were holding. Guns. I gasped right away. My mind was all over the place, and the house suddenly felt unrecognizable. Find a way to the basement. Victor's down there. Don't let him know you're coming. What the heck? They know my name. What's going on? Who are these people? I almost lost my balance and nearly fell back into the basement. A chill ran down my spine as I heard the footsteps of the 3 guys above and their flashlights' faint beams shining through the gaps in the stairs. There were only 5 more steps, but why did each one feel so long? And time seemed to slow down. The guns in their hands made it hard to breathe, and my legs felt like they were going to give out. There was only one thought in my head. How the hell do I get out of here? But the atmosphere felt like it was closing in, suffocating me. Hearing the whispers and footsteps fade away, my mind was too scrambled to come up with a clear plan. In the end, I decided to just run as fast as I could, charging straight into the fear and pushing through it. Only then could I hope to get out. I finally made it to the kitchen, and just then, one of the 3 guys who broke in showed up. He pointed the light at me, and without wasting a second, I opened the window and jumped out. The cold and the force of the storm hit me right away and woke up my nerves. I had just one goal, to get as far away from the house as possible. The road ahead was pitch black, and the only light I had was the occasional flash of lightning to guide me. I tried not to look back, even though I could hear screams and gunshots getting farther away behind me. I ran to the neighbor's house nearby, knocked on the door in a panic, and when it opened, I just collapsed, totally exhausted and cold. The middle-aged neighbor, looking worried, quickly pulled me inside and called the cops right away. In the middle of the storm and all the chaos, I could only breathe a sigh of relief, knowing I was finally safe. Later that night, the place was a mess, with signs of a break-in, and all the valuables were gone. The aftermath of that horrible night wasn't just the stuff I lost, but also the mental scars that stuck with me. I couldn't go back to the basement anymore. Every time I thought about going back, I'd get this wave of panic, like the thieves were still out there, just waiting for the chance to hit again. The banging, footsteps in the night, and the dim flashlight on the stairs, everything turned into creepy memories. I started jumping at every little noise around me. I felt stuck between two worlds, my normal everyday life and this dark world of scary memories. I started going to therapy so I could talk about how I was feeling without worrying about being judged. I also started doing medication and working out to keep my mind and body in balance. But real peace still felt pretty far off. Every time it rains and night falls, the creepy feeling comes back.
My name is Gail, and I was 12 years old when this happened. Summer in our small Arizona town was always hot and quiet. My parents worked all day, leaving my 6-year-old sister Emma and me at home. Our single-story wooden house sat at the end of a long driveway, surrounded by tall oak trees. That day, it was around 2 p.m. Emma was lying on the living room rug, watching cartoons, while I sat at the kitchen table doing my homework. Our dog, Lucky, was sleeping by the back door, tongue lolling out from the heat. A loud banging at the front door startled me. It wasn't a polite knock, but heavy thumps. Emma turned her head to look at me. "Sarah, someone's at the door." I stopped my homework and walked into the living room. Through the window beside the front door, I saw a strange man standing outside, staring at us. His face and attire were so contrasting that I still remember them clearly. He was dressed neatly, but his face was covered in a thick, bushy beard. He held a pink briefcase with Mickey Mouse on it, which looked very eye-catching. When he saw me looking intently, the man smiled, pointing at the briefcase in his hand. I couldn't tear my eyes away from it, partly because of its bright color, partly because I kept wondering, why would a grown man carry a child's briefcase? I didn't open the door. Mom had told us never to open the door for strangers when no adults were home. The man continued to wave, smiling. He pointed to the briefcase, then pointed to the door, as if to say he had something for us. "Sarah, what does he want?" Emma came over to me, her voice trembling. "I don't know. Stay away from the door." I pulled my sister back, my eyes still fixed on the outside. The man stood there for a few more minutes, then suddenly turned away. I thought he was leaving, but no. He walked along the side path of the house, heading towards the back. My heart pounded. I ran into the kitchen, looking through the back window. The man had reached the back door, standing right outside the wooden steps. He placed the briefcase on the ground, then grabbed the doorknob. Lucky sprang up, fur bristling, barking loudly. The doorknob was violently rattled. The door shook, but luckily, Mom always locked it securely whenever she left. The man stopped, looking into the house through the back door's glass. His eyes met mine. He smiled, then gestured with his hand for me to open the door. "No." I shook my head hard. He continued to gesture, this time more urgently. Why did he want to enter our house? Why wasn't he saying anything? Emma ran to me, clutching my arm tightly. "Sarah, I'm scared." Lucky barked incessantly, constantly lunging towards the back door. The man didn't seem afraid or annoyed by the barking. He just stood there, patiently gesturing for me to open the door. I ran to the landline phone in the living room. With the mind of a 12-year-old, I wondered whether to call Mom or the police first. Suddenly, Emma burst into loud sobs. I couldn't even make the call. I quickly dropped the phone and ran to my sister. I hugged her, trying to comfort her. Looking back at the man, he had pressed his face against the door, his smile wider now, his hand still waving. I tried to make my voice loud and clear. "I've already called the police. They're on their way." Through the glass, I saw the man stop gesturing. He tilted his head, as if listening. Then he gave a chilling laugh, as if he knew I was lying. He continued to stand there looking into the house with patient eyes, as if he could wait all day. Suddenly, I remembered. Grandma was on her way to visit us. She would be here around 3 p.m. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 2:45 p.m. I quickly pulled Emma back into the living room to call Grandma. My voice trembled as I told her about the strange man. Listen carefully. You and Emma run to the back bedroom right now. Lock the door, and Grandma will be there soon. I did exactly as she said. We ran into Mom and Dad's bedroom in the back of the house, and I locked the door. Emma crawled onto the bed, while I sat close to the door, listening. Lucky was still barking, but now the barks were less frequent. 5 minutes stretched like an eternity. Finally, I heard the engine of Grandma's car. The car door slammed shut. Footsteps on the pathway. Sarah! Emma! Grandma's voice echoed from the front. I opened the bedroom door, ran out, and hugged her tightly, crying loudly. Grandma kept asking if my sister and I were okay, and she checked to see if either of us was hurt. She quickly ushered us inside, locked the door, and called the police. My parents also rushed home. There were no signs that he had tried to break in. The back doorknob wasn't damaged. There were no footprints in the soft earth under the windows. The police concluded the man likely had mental health issues. The man never returned. It's been 11 years since that day, and I still vividly remember his smile. And I still wonder, what was in that pink briefcase? Why did he want to enter our house? Some questions never get answers. I'm Chasey. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings, and my little sister Lauren is 8. This is the unforgettable story of me and my sister's crazy and scary Christmas Eve last year. My family wasn't like those TV families with a Christmas tree loaded with presents or a cozy dinner by the fire. My dad worked hard, but we were still struggling with money. My mom, who was really my stepmom, drank a lot and barely cared about us. That Christmas Eve, my dad drove 3 hours to work. My stepmom got drunk and passed out in the afternoon, leaving us to take care of ourselves. I still wanted to make a good memory for Lauren. I'd saved up some money from my part-time job to buy Lauren a little gift, a dog keychain she really liked. When I gave her the gift, Lauren's eyes lit up, and her big smile made me feel like all the effort was totally worth it. Lauren surprised me even more. She gave me a handmade card with a thank you note and cute little drawings. A weird, warm feeling spread through my heart. We sat next to each other, all curled up in a big blanket, eating popcorn and watching Christmas shows on the old TV. Everything felt calm and happy. But then, there was a sudden knock at the door. Lauren jumped up and yelled, "It's gotta be Dad!" and ran toward the door without thinking, but I quickly pulled her back. Before he left, Dad had told me real seriously, "Don't open the door to anyone, especially on Christmas Eve. That's when bad guys can take advantage of things." Lauren still wouldn't listen and kept trying to run to the door. She looked through the peephole and shouted, "It's Santa Claus! Chasey, open the door!" But I felt a sense of unease rising in my heart. I looked through the peephole and saw a guy in a red suit and a Santa hat. But the look in his eyes was nothing like I'd imagine a nice Santa would have. His cold stare at the door made my skin crawl. I pulled Lauren away from the door, trying to sound firm. "You can't open the door. That's not Dad, and it's definitely not Santa." The guy outside started using a sweet voice, saying he just wanted to give us presents. But I wasn't fooled. I yelled through the door, telling him to leave. Instead of giving up, he got even more patient. The knocking got louder, more regular, and kept going. He pulled some stuff out of his pocket and started messing with the lock. My heart was pounding, and Lauren was shaking as she clung to me. I pulled Lauren over to the landline to call my dad, but the phone was dead, and my sisters and I just got more and more freaked out. At this point, I decided to call 911, but the operator didn't believe me and thought we were just messing around. I felt totally helpless and hopeless. Meanwhile, Lauren ran upstairs to wake up her stepmom, but nothing could get her to wake up. Lauren ran back down, hugged me, and then just broke down in tears. Outside, the sound of the door being broken down kept getting louder, and the creepy guy's laugh sounded like he was enjoying watching my sisters and me freak out. I had to come up with a way to fix this situation. I looked around the living room and stopped, when I saw the smoke alarm on the ceiling. An idea popped into my head. I decided to create an emergency so the fire department would come and help us. I grabbed a roll of tissue, lit a small candle, and held it up to the smoke alarm. The fire alarm went off loud, and about 10 minutes later, I heard the fire truck siren. We sighed in relief when we saw the headlights shining through the window. But what was even crazier was the guy outside the door suddenly yelling really loud. He said he was our dad, pretending to be Santa Claus, but got stuck outside. His voice came through urgently, asking the firefighters to break down the door. The fear that hadn't completely gone away hit me even harder. My hands were freezing, but the worry about my sister's safety and mine made me feel stronger than ever. I knew that right then, I had to act fast. I remembered the family photo hanging on the wall in the living room. I quickly grabbed the photo, ran out, and cracked the door open, holding it up with shaky hands. I told the firefighters everything that happened. The guy outside wasn't my dad. He was a scammer who'd tricked us and was trying to break down the door. When the firefighters gave him suspicious looks, the creep immediately turned to run but got held back. The police were called right away, and the guy was quickly restrained. Once the situation was settled, the firefighters called my dad's work to let him know about the emergency. My dad came straight home that night. When he found out what happened, he was really mad. He and my stepmom got into a huge argument and then decided to get a divorce. My dad said that me and my sisters were the most important things in the world. My dad also switched jobs so he could spend more time taking care of us. That Christmas Eve was super scary, but it also made me realize how much power and responsibility I have as the oldest sister. And most importantly, it brought a change to my family, a new start to a better life, one without fear or lack of love. I'm Nicholas, 19, living in a chill suburb of a small town in Michigan. I've always seen this place as pretty quiet, maybe even kind of boring. But last week, something went down that totally changed everything. It was the night I figured out that sometimes the scariest stuff isn't shadows or ghost stories, it's people, the ones lurking behind a screen. The story starts on a Wednesday night while I was swiping through Tinder. I wasn't really thinking about it, just scrolling like it was any other way to kill time. But then, this familiar face popped up, Maria. She went to high school with me, one of the most popular girls in our class. With her long, shiny hair, big eyes, and bright smile, she always caught everyone's attention. I could barely believe it when I got the notification. She swiped right on me. I texted her right away to show my excitement, trying to keep it cool. Maria and I were texting back and forth for a few days. She seemed upbeat, friendly, but mysterious too. When Maria texted me saying she wanted to come over next Friday night, I felt like everything was perfect, and I just wanted to jump around with excitement. My parents were off on a weekend trip to Wisconsin, and my little sister Mia was usually in her room watching movies. I didn't even think twice about saying yes since I knew Maria, and I would have some time alone. Friday night, I got everything set up. The living room was clean, snacks were set out on the table, and I even turned on the patio lights to make it feel cozy. But when it hit 8, then 9, Maria still hadn't shown up. I started to get worried, but I told myself maybe she was stuck in traffic, something came up, or she just changed her mind. By 10 p.m., I sent a couple more texts, but she didn't reply. By this point, I was starting to feel uneasy. I grabbed my phone and gave her a call. When she picked up, I heard Maria's familiar voice, but it didn't feel as comforting as I thought it would. Her voice was cold and distant, and what she said hit me like a punch to the gut. Maria wasn't even on Tinder. Someone must have been pretending to be her. I felt like my blood just turned to ice. If it wasn't Maria, then who the heck had been texting me? Even worse, how did that person know where I live? I quickly went around checking all the windows and doors to make sure they were locked. My mind was racing with a million thoughts. Was this just some stupid prank, or was it something way more serious? My sister was up in her room. I didn't want to freak her out, so I just casually told her to lock her door. Mia gave me a curious look, but I just shook my head and didn't say anything else. I sat back down on the couch in the living room, trying to chill out. Outside, the wind was whistling through the bare branches, making this soft, whispery sound. The clock in the living room kept ticking, and every second felt like it was dragging on forever. Out of nowhere, I heard a weird noise coming from upstairs. I jumped up, my heart racing like crazy. Soft footsteps, really light but definitely clear. I froze, straining to hear, and then Mia's piercing scream shattered the silence. I bolted up the stairs, but it felt like my legs had turned to stone heavy and hard to move. Mia's door was wide open, and she was standing there, huddled up, pointing at the window. I looked where she was pointing and saw a tall figure standing in the yard under the pale yellow light. He was wearing a black hoodie, just standing there, completely still, like he was watching us. Before I could even move, he turned and vanished into the darkness. Mia was trembling. I grabbed her, pulled her into my room, locked the door, and quickly called 911. While waiting for the police, I clutched a kitchen knife I'd grabbed from downstairs, my hands slick with sweat. The wind outside now sounded like someone scratching at the glass, and every little noise in the house made me jump out of my skin. But the scariest thing didn't happen at Mia's window. It happened at my parents' bedroom window. A sharp noise echoed, like glass being slid open. I froze, barely breathing, feeling like a rush of cold air had just swept in from somewhere. I didn't dare open the door. I just kept praying the police would get there in time. About 10 minutes later, the flashing red and blue lights of a police car lit up the window, and I finally felt a wave of relief, like I'd just been saved. The cops searched the entire house, inside and out. They found my parents' bedroom window had been forced open, with clear footprints in the snow outside, leading into the woods. Even though they searched the area around the house, they didn't find anyone. One of the officers asked if I had any idea who it could be, or if my family knew anyone suspicious. I had no idea how to answer. How could I even explain that this person had probably used a fake identity to trick me into thinking they were someone else on a dating app? After that night, I couldn't sleep right ever again. Every time I looked out the window, I couldn't shake the feeling that person's silhouette was out there, hiding in the dark. I couldn't help but wonder, why me? Was it just random, or was there something more to it? Whatever the reason is, I know things will never go back to normal. That person is still out there, waiting, and that thought haunts me every single night. Be careful what you come across online. Not everything's true, and not everyone's got good intentions. Sometimes the scariest things aren't ghosts or horror stories, but people you know, with a darkness behind them you never saw coming.
I have never forgotten that night. The night I first truly felt fear. I was only 16 years old at the time, living with my parents in an old house a few miles outside of town. The house had an old-fashioned design with a sloping roof and stained glass windows. The wind would whistle through the cracks in the windows, bringing with it the smell of damp earth, making the place both cozy and eerie in its own way. We didn't own the house, but rented it through a middle-aged man, Mr. Dwight. Both my parents worked the night shift at the town hospital, my dad in the emergency room, and my mom as a nurse. They would leave the house late in the afternoon and not return until the next morning. So I was used to being home alone, even though it could be a bit chilly and sometimes downright scary. That night, the sky outside was pitch black. I sat in the living room, the dim light from the lamp casting a soft yellow glow on the cracked walls. I was curled up on the couch, reading an old book, when I heard a noise. It sounded like someone walking on the gravel outside. At first, I thought it was the neighbors' pets. They often ran into my yard like that. But then, I heard another sound. It was a light tap on the window. I sat up straight, my heart pounding. Through the dim light, I saw a shadow outside. I held my breath, staring through the glass. It was a man dressed in black, with a scarf covering his face, and the figure looked very familiar. His eyes sent a chill down my spine, slowly, as if peering right through the glass, looking straight into my mind. He pressed his hand against the window, as if trying to get a better look inside. I froze, not daring to move. After a moment, he started walking around the house, trying all the doors. The back door creaked as he grabbed the handle, then the side door, then the front door. Each movement was smooth and deliberate, as if he knew the house layout very well. "I know you're in there. Don't hide. I have a special gift for you," he said in a flat, drawn-out voice. I snapped out of my fear-induced stupor and ran to lock all the doors, securing each lock as quickly as I could. My hands were shaking as I grabbed the key, trying to twist it fast before the man got any closer. I looked up and saw that he had returned to the living room window. His eyes were fixed on me through the glass, and a twisted smile appeared on his face under the dim light. I tried to stay calm and reached for the phone on the table. I texted my dad. "Dad, there's a strange man. He's walking around the house. Please come home." I didn't call because I was afraid he might hear the ringtone or my voice. The house was so quiet that even the smallest sound could echo. When I sent the text, I heard the window shaking. He was trying to open it. I crawled off the couch, doing my best not to make any noise. I hid in the dark corner between the couch and the bookshelf, listening to my own breath. The wind outside still howled, but his footsteps and the sound of the door handles rattling as he tried to open them made my heart race. He was muttering something, but I couldn't make out the words. Time seemed to stretch on, as if every second lasted an eternity. Then suddenly, everything went silent. No more footsteps, no more tapping. I didn't dare leave my hiding spot. A little while later, I heard the sound of my dad's car pulling into the driveway. I ran outside, tears streaming down my face, and threw myself into my dad's arms. My dad looked around and saw a small brown box right in front of the front door. On top of it was a piece of paper with messy handwriting. A gift for my little girl. Inside the box was an old, worn doll with wide, unblinking eyes. My dad scanned the area, then noticed a pale pink envelope right by the door. My name was written on it in capital letters, along with a small heart symbol next to it. Inside the envelope were photos of me, watering plants in the garden, laughing while playing with the dogs, and even one of me sleeping in my own room. I felt my blood run cold when I saw the scribbled note on a small piece of paper. "You look so beautiful when you're alone." The police arrived shortly after and began searching the house, inside and out. The next morning, they discovered fingerprints on the living room window, where the man had tried to open it. Additionally, security footage from a nearby house showed him lurking around the area that night. When the police investigated further, they found a hidden door in the basement, a door that my family had never known about. The door led to a secret room filled with strange objects, old film reels, antique cameras, and numerous photographs of women, including me. The police confirmed that part of the house's structure had been altered before it was rented out, serving a sick purpose. Mr. Dwight, the landlord, was immediately arrested. He quickly confessed to his crimes, but did so with a disturbing sense of pleasure. He also admitted that he hadn't just done this to my family. The house was his great design, a place where he had lured many victims before. Some girls had luckily escaped, but not all of them. That secret room was now part of the investigation into missing persons cases in the area. So it turned out that his friendly and eager demeanor, promoting the house as a safe, peaceful place for families, was all an act. He had even agreed to lower the rent, claiming it was to keep the house occupied and prevent damage. But all of those actions were not out of kindness. They were because he wanted easy access to my family, especially me. My family immediately packed up and moved to a place closer to town, with friendly neighbors and modern security systems. We sold most of our old belongings because we didn't want to take anything that had once belonged to that house. But even though we had moved, the haunting never left me. Sometimes, I dream of Mr. Dwight's eyes watching me from the basement window, staring at me unblinking. I always feel like someone is watching me, even when I know I'm in a much safer place.
I am James, a student at FSU, Florida. My family lives far away in Gruene, Texas, so I only go home during long breaks and on important holidays. I don't have any siblings. All of my parents' love and attention are focused on me. Each time I return, my parents are always joyful and happy. Everything was peaceful until the horrifying event that happened in the summer after I completed my first year at university. I joyfully hugged my parents, taking a deep breath of the familiar and peaceful air of home. The next day, I helped my dad clean up the backyard garden as I had promised. My family has a fairly large backyard, and when I was younger, I used to invite my friends over to camp overnight. After many years of neglect, my dad decided to clean it up and build a shed there. Thanks to my dad's plan, I was overjoyed to rediscover my treasure after many years of being forgotten. The treehouse on the large oak tree, that was the birthday gift my dad had carefully prepared for me when I turned 9. A feeling of nostalgia rose in my heart, as if a part of my memory that had been buried in the past suddenly awakened. Each crack, each loose piece of wood seemed to remind me of a time long past, the days when I was a child, running around here, laughing and playing with my friends. I used to be so happy and proud to own it. From that day on, I visited the treehouse every day, cleaning up, reinforcing the rotting stairs, and fixing the cracks caused by rain and wind. One evening, my parents went to a party at Uncle Jim's house, a longtime friend of our family. Since I wasn't feeling well, I declined to attend. While my parents were away, I decided to visit the treehouse once again, as a way to find some peace and reconnect with a forgotten memory. The dim light from the street lamp cast a faint glow onto the backyard where the treehouse stood. The house seemed like a silent ghost, old and worn, with its gray roof fading over the years. Despite that, it still stood strong, as if waiting for me to return. I walked across the yard, my heart filled with mixed emotions, each step bringing me closer to my childhood days. I shuddered slightly, but didn't think much of it. I pulled the ladder up and climbed into the house. The space inside was cold and still. The old walls and the dusty bookshelf made me feel like I had just stepped through a time portal. I sat down on the old chair, trying to enjoy the peaceful feeling, but suddenly, a faint noise from outside startled me. I stood up, walked to the small window, and looked out into the backyard. 2 figures were sneaking up toward my parents' house. The streaks of light from the street lamps cutting through the darkness made me realize they were holding guns. A wave of fear spread throughout my body, and I quickly pulled my phone from my pocket and called the police. But unfortunately, one of them noticed me, probably because I had spoken quite loudly in my fear. One of them shouted loudly, and without waiting for me to respond, he began heading toward the wooden house. In that moment, everything seemed to collapse. My heart raced, and my throat tightened. I meant to run, but I didn't have time. They were already very close, gripping their guns tightly and aiming them at me. In a moment of panic, an idea suddenly came to me. I rushed out the front door, and with all the strength I could muster, I pulled up the wooden ladder, at least cutting off their only way up. I shut the door and windows of the treehouse tightly, barricading myself inside, hoping the police would arrive soon. Luckily, my father had been very careful and meticulous when securing the locks on the house. When I heard the crunching footsteps outside the treehouse, the anxiety within me immediately turned into panic. A suffocating feeling spread through my body, and each breath seemed to make the air around me even more stifling. The small door of the treehouse began to creak under the pressure of stones and the wooden planks left behind after cleaning up the garden. The feeling of fear spread like a wave, with every sound making me jump. The first gunshot rang out, a deafening blast that made my heart skip a beat, and I almost collapsed. The next gunshot rang out closer, followed by a series of bullets embedding into the wooden body of the house. One of them slipped through a rotten gap I hadn't had a chance to fix. I backed into the corner of the room, trying to stay calm, but the truth was, there was nowhere to hide. The house was too small and fragile. The two thieves continued to shout, curse, and threaten relentlessly. The sound of police sirens in the distance brought a sense of hope, but a part of me still didn't dare to breathe. The two thieves shouted curses before leaving. It took me quite a while to calm down and finally leave the treehouse. It was then that I called my parents. They returned in a panic and hugged me tightly. After more than 2 hours of playing hide and seek with the police, the two thieves were finally caught. Luckily, it only took me a few days for my mind to truly stabilize. The first thing I did was help my dad repair the treehouse. It was a beautiful part of my childhood memory, and also my savior in the moment I faced danger.
I'm Oscar, and the creepy stuff I went through was like 15 years back. Back then, unlike most guys my age, I was pretty shy and kept to myself. When I was a kid, I didn't hang around or anything. Just stayed home, watched TV, and read stories. When I got older, like in high school, I was still pretty quiet. I didn't cause trouble, but I wasn't killing it in school or great at any subject either. Back then, my buddies were all flexing with their girlfriends, while I was just showing off the skills I leveled up in my game. There wasn't much to say since everyone was into their own stuff. But I was the only one up front, so those group hangouts made me feel totally out of place. I got self-conscious about how I talked, especially if I was talking to a girl. There were a couple of girls in school who'd come up to me, but after like 3 sentences, they'd bounce. I only felt confident in my skills when I was gaming, so I started spending more and more time on it. And then, I met my first crush in the game. Her name was Casey, or at least, that's what I figured from her game tag. Funny enough, both Casey and I lived in New York. After a few times of being on the same team, I noticed Casey, but I wasn't really looking to get to know her. Then, out of nowhere, she hit me up first. Casey's way of talking was pretty hilarious. Had me laughing all the time. I figured she was around my age. Just a guess, though. Didn't want to ask anything too personal. We talked a lot about our shared love for gaming, and slowly started chatting about life and feelings, too. Talking to Casey made my heart feel tired, 'cause it just wouldn't stop racing. Every day, I couldn't wait for game time, and seeing Casey's name online would have me grinning like an idiot. After we'd been chatting for like 2 weeks, Casey just suddenly dropped that she liked me, and I sat there staring at her messages for like 10 minutes, totally shocked. So, I had a girlfriend and was all proud, showing her off to my friends.
They were doubting it and told me to bring Casey to the next hangout. Before I could even bring it up to Casey, she was the one who suggested we meet. Casey's always like that. Her being so upfront and taking the lead totally surprised and made me happy. Casey wanted to hang at my place, just the two of us, and only in the evening when no one else was around. I said yes to Casey, but I was low-key stressing about how to tell my parents and brother. But fate really hooked me up and made it easy to meet my first love. My parents said they were going to a party at a friend's place, and my brother and his crew were heading out for the night. I was hyped and texted Casey, and we set a time to meet up. To be all suave, I offered to pick Casey up, but she turned me down and told me to just wait at home for a surprise. I sent Casey my address and got everything ready for our first date. I cleaned up my room, threw on a nice suit, and secretly used my brother's hair wax and cologne. My phone buzzed with a message, and I grabbed it quick to check out Casey's profile pic. "I'm outside your house." My heart started racing. My hands and feet were sweating, and I was so freaked out I totally forgot to open the door. I took a deep breath, opened the door, and no one was there. I stood there for a minute, ran to the gate to check around, then ran back inside to grab my phone and text Casey again. She said she messed up the address and would be over in a sec. I ran to the bathroom, fixed myself up, then plopped down in the living room to wait. I couldn't sit still, kept wringing my shirt, and then the door knocked again. This time, I rushed over like crazy and threw open the door. What I saw made me freeze. A fat guy with messy clothes and hair was just standing there grinning at me. "You need help?" I said, all confused. "Hey, Oscar, it's Casey." The guy grinned big, eyes wide open. I froze when he said his name, Casey. Before I could even react, he stepped up, shoved his arm against the door, and wouldn't let me close it. I ran inside, grabbed my phone, bolted to my room, locked the door, and shaking, dialed the cops. He was outside, knocking on the door like non-stop, calling my name real soft. Didn't yell or anything. Each knock made my whole body freeze up, and I covered my ears in both hands till it hurt. The fear had me, a 14-year-old, crying like a little kid, even though I was in my own house. The cops showed up, and the guy was gone, along with some small stuff from the living room. My parents and brother came back soon after, and they totally freaked out when they saw the house and how out of it I looked. After more than 3 days of looking, the cops finally caught Casey, but I couldn't bring myself to face him. I didn't even dare to tell anyone how stupid I was for giving a stranger my address and personal info. It was so embarrassing, thinking I had feelings for a freak for almost a month. Definitely a lesson in being careful that I'll never forget. My name is Taylor. 12 years ago, when I was still a naive 9-year-old girl, I had a close friendship with Maddie. We were in the same class and lived in the same neighborhood, so we were always inseparable, like a pair of twin sisters. Both of our parents loved each other's friends, so I often stayed over at Maddie's house, and he did the same. My house was at the end of the neighborhood, while Maddie's house was in the middle. Everything here was very peaceful and gentle, from the neighbors to the animals they kept. Dogs were the most common pets in my neighborhood. The lovely and friendly four-legged friends with all sorts of sizes and colors. I really, really loved dogs, and many times I asked my parents for permission to have a small dog. But my parents didn't agree, because I was still too young to take responsibility for an animal's life. That made me long even more to have a loyal companion by my side. One afternoon, When Maddie and I were playing in front of her house, there were no adults at home. A man whom neither Maddie nor I had ever seen in the neighborhood before appeared. He was walking a large, light yellow dog, which I later learned was a Labrador. The man called out to Maddie and me, saying that we could pet his dog if we wanted to. We often did the same with other dogs in the neighborhood, so we were excited and ran over. But the man's dog smelled very bad, as if it hadn't been bathed in months. I noticed that the dog seemed quite lethargic and tired, constantly scratching, causing fur and dirt to fly everywhere. The owner of the dog was a tall man with a thick beard that covered most of his mouth, but his head was shaved and shiny. He stared at us intently, and the constant smile hidden beneath his beard trembled ever so slightly. With my hands were covered in dirt and dog hair, that made a picky girl like me feel uncomfortable. Maddie was still happily petting the dog, while I just stood there watching. The man took out a camera and offered to take a picture of us playing with his dog. I didn't answer, while Maddie happily agreed. I noticed the smile on the man's face become increasingly frightening. The clicking sounds and the constant flash of the camera made me feel very uncomfortable. His posture while taking the pictures became more hunched, and the camera moved closer and closer toward Maddie. I pulled Maddie's hand to stand her up straight and told her I wanted to go inside to wash my hands. The man seemed displeased with me, but quickly regained his smile and made a new suggestion. He said we could come to his house on the next street, where there were lots of candy and 2 adorable cats. Maddie clapped her hands in excitement and immediately agreed, while I just wanted to go wash my hands right then. I didn't feel comfortable at all with the man in front of me, especially his gaze and smile. Seeing that I seemed hesitant, he added more words to stimulate Maddie's excitement. He told me to go inside and wash my hands. He would wait to go with me. I was hesitated for a moment, then quickly ran into the house, quickly washed my hands with water, and ran back out. But Maddie and the other man were gone. I ran out of the house in a panic, shouting Maddie's name as I ran. The thought of losing her made me extremely panicked. I ran home, crying and telling my parents to quickly find Maddie. After hearing me recount everything, my parents immediately called Maddie's parents and the police. I observed everyone's reactions and sensed that the situation was very serious, which made me even more panicked, and I couldn't stop crying. By that evening, I heard the police announce that they had found the man's house, and Maddie was also found inside. In his house, the police found many photographs of young girls taken from various angles and distances. After being examined, the doctor concluded that Maddie showed signs of abuse, but fortunately, it was at a mild level. The perverted man's name is Dominic, 56 years old, and he had to stand trial for 2 consecutive charges. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison and will continue to be monitored after serving his sentence. My mom took me to visit Maddie at the hospital, and fortunately, she was doing very well. I promised that I would never leave Maddie alone again, and she promised to always be careful with everything.